When I was 20, I was a young man living large in my first kind of shitty apartment in downtown Atlanta. I was in a committed relationship with my 19-year-old girlfriend, and she would sleep over basically every night. And since we were in the throes of young romance, obviously we slept naked. Everything was great. One night, still groggy from sleep, I looked up to see a man in the doorway. I frequently suffer from sleep paralysis, and almost immediately thought nothing of it. But unlike with sleep paralysis, I was able to move to rub my eyes. That's when the gravity of the situation set in. Luckily, my girlfriend was fully covered, but I was not, even in the slightest. And I instantly felt violated, angry, and protective of my girlfriend. So I grabbed a knife from my bedside table and, still naked, went to investigate, which in hindsight was not the best move. Right outside of my bedroom, there was a shampoo bottle from my bathroom and a mysterious substance on the wall and ground, which, thank God, the police identified as just shampoo. I freaked out at the sight of this though, because this was when I realized that it was not a sleep paralysis demon, but a real person with whom I, butt naked, made eye contact with as I woke up. He left out the back and took my key with him. It was one of those locks that could only be unlocked from the inside, so he effectively stopped me from seeing him by locking me in and took away my only key to my place in one fell swoop. Needless to say, me and my then girlfriend got the hell out of there to another person's apartment and waited for the cops to arrive. By the time they did, all of my electronics were gone. He hit a few of my neighbors' places too, but as far as I can tell, he was never caught. So I live in a county that was pretty rural until the last 10 or 15 years. The biggest town in our county is pretty crowded now, overcrowded, and I hate it. I moved from there to the countryside. I like where I live, except it can be really creepy at night, because for miles and miles it's dark and there's no street lights. One thing about this county is that the main roads always get backed up real quick, or there's an accident or whatever, so it pays to go the back roads. The back roads, like any other rural place, are less populated, dark, lots of trees, and no sidewalks. Anyways, a few years ago, something happened that almost made me stop using them. I was driving home kinda late one night. I decided to take one particular back road that shaved off 10 minutes from my commute home. I was tired and had to get up early, so I was going fast, trying to get home soon. This road is a little more populated than some, but it's super spooky in some stretches because huge trees are alongside the road, and their branches and leaves make a tunnel of sorts. So I'm zipping through and round a curve. Up ahead, I see what I thought was a giant garden flag. You know, the flags that people put up in spring in their yards. Well, I thought it was a weird flag because it seemed like it was fairly tall and large, and it was in the middle of the road. As I get closer, my headlights hit it, and it's not a flag. It's a person, a lady. She was wearing a red fez. I live in rural Maryland. You just don't see a fez every day. A long flowy white dress and an orange reflective sash across her chest. A little strange because she's in the middle of the street. As I drove past her, it got weirder. As dark as it was, as I drove by, I could see she was about 60. She had glasses and I could see her bright blue eyes. She looked in my passenger window and she started doing this weird bounce thing. I thought she was going to try to get into my car. Mind you, I'm going pretty fast. I don't know what it was about her, but she freaked me out. I didn't think she would rob me. I really thought she was a soul snatcher or a skinwalker. I honestly didn't think she was even human. I can't adequately describe how creepy she was. I sped past her as fast as I could. I kept glancing in my back seat to make sure she had not materialized in my car. I prayed, recited scripture, and kept watching my rearview mirror. It was spring, so a little warm, but I felt bone-chillingly cold. I finally make it home, and I run in to tell my mom the story. I got in just as my brother was telling my mom about this weird lady he saw as he was driving. It was the same lady, but he saw her at the intersection from the highway and the back roads, whereas I saw her further down the road. We both had the same reaction. She also tried looking in his car. She was also bouncing around when he saw her. He said there was a car in front of him that sped off so fast when they drove past the lady. My brother was so freaked out that he won't travel that road anymore, even during the day. Eventually, I found out that the lady lives in the woods. Apparently, at one time her family lived on that road. Her father was ill and she tried to take him to the hospital. He died on the way there, and she drove around with his body in her car for hours. I guess she has mental health issues, and I think she lost the house or got kicked out. I have friends that live off of that street, so when I was talking about it, they knew exactly who it was. I still go on that road, but I haven't seen her since. I do hope she's okay, but I really do not want to run into her again. The first house my parents bought was on acres of land down an old dirt logging road in the middle of the woods. It was me, my brother, mom, and dad, and this small house pretty isolated in thick forest. My brother and I loved the place. There was a network of old logging roads that were great for bike riding. Our closest neighbor was at the beginning of the logging road, about a quarter of a mile from our house. The neighbor's house sat on a large green lawn. There was plenty of sunshine up that end of the road, the beginning of the road, lots of open space, a swimming pool, sunshine, and happiness, but we would drive past that and quickly the forest would swallow us. Our front lawn was small and saw little sunlight. Our backyard was forest and another logging road. I always noticed Dad would leave the loaded shotgun under their bed for Mother when he would be gone away. A grim reminder, this world has teeth. One day we drove past the sunny bright start of our logging road to our house. I forget if it was my mother or father who was driving, but they both were in the car, and both saw something or heard something. Something alarmed them as our vehicle pulled into the driveway. My dad told us all to stay inside the vehicle. He quickly entered our home and investigated whatever it was that got his and Mom's attention. Later that night, I heard Dad tell my mom. They ran out the back of the garage when they heard us pull in. Not long after that incident, my dad was gone for the night. I didn't mind nights Dad was gone. I got used to them. This night was different though. My brother and I were watching TV. In the background, at the periphery of our consciousness, our mother frantically called a family friend who lived across town. The call was brief, and when it was over, Mom told me and my brother to get our jackets on and go straight to the car. She was serious, direct, and my mother was scared. The mood was real and very damp with dread. We left our house and drove to the friend's home. Mom didn't talk to me or my brother about what had happened, but that night we stayed at the friend's house, and I heard my mom say to her friend, he was in our yard, standing by the swing set. When I worked a traditional job, I had a Wednesday/Thursday morning, which was my Friday, tradition of going to IHOP after my shift ended at 2:30 in the morning. I didn't want to cook, and if I remember, we had moved my father in with us at this point, and I didn't want to disturb him. We'd been doing this for a couple of years at this point, and were regulars. It came with some nice perks. We got there, and as we were pulling into the parking lot, a girl ran up to my window. I was a smoker at the time, so it was partially open. I was apt to dismiss her, thinking she's drunk or going to beg for money. Before I could even acknowledge her, she rushed into a speech that honestly felt rehearsed, about her boyfriend driving off and leaving her stranded. I'm a domestic abuse survivor, and I thought I knew a line of BS when I heard it, but my ex was a gullible idiot and begged me to give her a ride. She claimed that she wanted to go to her mom's house, and it was just a couple of minutes away. I didn't know then that my current partner preyed on me in new ways, but after listening to her beg me, I just relented and told the girl to get in the back seat. She was acting intoxicated, but it felt rehearsed too. Everything was a little too exaggerated and over the top. It's like she watched drunk people in lousy teen comedies or Jersey Shore, which was popular at the time, and modeled her drunkenness after that. I observed her, kept my guard up regarding what I said, and often cut my ex off during the conversation, so she wouldn't know anything descriptive. This chick refused to give me an address and was guiding me with left here or right here directions. These directions were confident, despite the chick saying that she wasn't really sure where she was, but it was only a couple of minutes away. This chick didn't know that I grew up in this general area, and I had started to recognize the place she was pointing me to. It was the neighborhood that I grew up in and still frequented to visit old friends. Now, I'm guessing that she didn't think that I knew where I was, and that I knew the ins and outs of the neighborhood. I was adamantly playing a bit dumb, and had gotten it through to my girlfriend to shut up. This chick was babbling, my guess trying to keep up the drunk routine, but she was starting to make no sense. She was talking about how happy they'd be, and how she'll get a reward. I noticed that she was scratching her arm, which I know as a junkie scratch, and I started to get concerned about what I might be walking/driving into. I think she suspected something when I pulled into an area that wasn't something you knew of if you were not from the neighborhood. She sobered up instantly when I said that I would need to drop her here, and she could walk the rest of the way due to the construction. She started screaming that she would fall in the river and the lake. Yes, both. Then I'm reasonably sure that she realized I knew better. At that point, she went ballistic and started yelling about how she needed me to get her to the door, and that I needed to walk her to the door, and that she had to take me to them. She bailed fast, and the previous wobble was gone as she channeled her inner Usain Bolt. We headed off to IHOP, and a regular waitress commented that we were later than usual. I told her we had had a detour. Nearly 20 years later, I still think that she was trying to get me mugged or trafficked or something like that. I'll never know, and I hope nothing bad happened to the girl. But shit was it creepy. This took place when I was 19. I'm now 28. I was in college and working as a bartender at a little country bar further out from the city. This place was also supposed to be 21 and over only, because there were gambling machines right along the bar. But the rule was, if anyone asks, you just turn 21. For the most part, I loved the job and loved the money. After a few weeks, I came in at 8 p.m. to start my shift, and it was already a pretty good crowd to be a weeknight. I make my rounds and see an attractive guy and his beer is empty, so I ask if he needs another. He immediately sparks up conversation with me. I find out he's 28, a paralegal, has a dog, etc. He finishes his new beer and leaves me a $20 bill as a tip, with a rose he made out of a bar napkin. This continued nightly for about a week, and we eventually exchanged phone numbers. I ended up letting him know that I wasn't 21, just in case things progressed, and he said he didn't mind. He would come into the bar nightly, text me after he left, and the following days until he came back into the bar that night. About 2 weeks go by, and I take a long weekend to go out of town around 3 hours away. It was St. Patrick's Day weekend that year, so my friends and I went out to party, of course. The guy, we'll call him Patrick, was continuing to text me, but I never let him know I was going anywhere. Things weren't serious to me. I never hung out with him outside of my work shift, so what's there to tell? I then get a phone call from one of the girls at work telling me there's a guy there that will not stop asking where I am and when I'm coming into work. It turns out it's Patrick. Immediate red flag to me, but I didn't want them to deal with the drama, so I text him and let him know I'll be back on Sunday, leaving out that I would be back and going straight to work that evening because, honestly, I didn't want him to know I'd be at the bar. He continues to text me all weekend, and I respond to keep the peace. I show up to work that Sunday to a new bouncer the owner hired. I can't tell you why, but I had this feeling, so I go ahead and spill about Patrick onto him just in case he showed up. A few hours pass and two guys come in and sit down. I stare at them for a minute and realize they're two guys that Patrick's been in there with before. I ask if they want anything, and they just ask for water. Sure enough, after I notice one of them make a phone call, here comes Patrick in the door. I immediately shoot the bouncer a look and he catches my drift. Patrick sits down and I keep the convo short and get his beer. He just keeps watching every single move I make. They eventually get up and go to the pool table and the jukebox. Next thing I know, Brown-Eyed Girl is playing. I have brown eyes, of course. And Patrick is standing there smiling at me. The song is over and I tell the bouncer to watch the bar for me. I needed to step out back and smoke a cigarette before I had a panic attack. I left the back door open so I could watch the bar for any new customers. Next thing I know, The Kill by 30 Seconds to Mars is playing. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. The bouncer comes to the door and is asking me for details about the guy and the situation. Here comes Patrick storming towards us. So he's why you aren't interested anymore? Literally starts a scene, going on about how he is heartbroken and can't believe I could do this to him. I'm just standing there smoking another cigarette, watching the crazy unfold on this guy. The bouncer finally gets him out, and after a few minutes I felt like I could breathe and go on about my night. It's 3 a.m., so we start to clean up, and the bouncer goes to take the trash out. He comes in and locks the door and tells me Patrick's in his car in our parking lot, but not to worry because he'll walk me to my car and not to go straight home in case Patrick tries to unleash more crazy on me. So I leave, and sure enough, in my rear view is the face of a stalker. I decide to go to Sheetz and get some breakfast/dinner. That's a well-lit, busy place at any time of the day, right? I go in and order my food, and here comes Patrick. I keep my back to him, hoping he'll take a hint, but this guy comes right up to me and puts his arm around my shoulders. I step to the side and he just casually laughs and then grabs my hand. I honestly can't even remember what I said, but something along the lines that he's a psycho and he leaves. I pay for my food, no sign of him in the parking lot, and head to my apartment. I remember being extremely anxious because you had to park across the street, but I made sure to have my key ready and everything in my hands to make a run for it. I get inside, lock the door, eat my food, shower, and finally lay down. That's when I hear it, the doorknob slightly jiggling. I was frozen in fear. I hear it again, this time louder. I went to get up to look out the peephole, but the floor was so old and squeaky. I took one step and was frozen again. This went on for minutes, and then it finally just stopped. It was going to be daylight soon, so I just laid there until I felt safe. I get a text from Patrick the next day apologizing for the night before, asking to get lunch, and says he wants me to meet his mother. I tell him, stop contacting me. I found him on Facebook and went ahead and blocked him, so he couldn't use that as a way to communicate. The text continued daily for months with no response from me, and I remember one day I didn't get a text and I thought, it's finally over. I received one text a year until I got a new number around 5 years ago, and it would always say, thinking of you. Luckily, I moved away and never ran into him again. I just can't help but think what would have ever happened if I would have gotten serious or went on a date with that guy. So this happened like a decade ago. I can't remember her name or how we met. My first memory is sitting with her late at night in a noisy pub on a first date. The waitress had just taken our drink order. So we're talking about this and that, and the conversation happens onto funny video clips. So I show her a funny clip on my phone. She giggles and produces the show me one. So I take her phone, and it's a clip of a man getting his head cut off by religious extremists. The feeling of horror, sorrow, and total emptiness comes over me, like a void, like a vast body of dark waters. There's nothing to say, nothing to do, no witty comeback, nowhere to go from here. Because it's seen, and it can never be unseen, and I wasn't given a choice in the matter. I just stare at her phone until it locks, and the light goes off. I look up at her, and she's just sitting there, taking in my reaction, smiling. There was no second date. This happened a little while back, when I was 15. I just discovered the rebellious act of sneaking out. This was probably my 4th or 5th time doing it, and this one night, I decided to go and meet up with my boyfriend. At this point in time, we weren't together, but we liked each other, and you know how that goes. When you're with someone you like, you tend to not really pay attention to what's going on around you. The night starts out fine, and we're having a good time. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about because we had gotten pretty high, but I do remember what happened. We'd met up and gone to this elementary school that had a decent-sized field, with some hills and trees towards the end. It's important for me to explain this in order for you to understand how things went down. From where we were sitting, we had a clear view of the school, as well as the school's basketball court. The school was illuminated from the side lights, so we could easily see if anyone walked by, but it wasn't necessarily easy for people to see us. And to our left was a little pavement path that led into a townhouse complex. So we're sitting there at the edge of the field, looking at the stars and talking about random stuff, when we start to hear the crunch of gravel coming from the school. Because we're high and paranoid, we immediately turn our attention to the illuminated basketball court. We watch as this guy walks by with his bike and doesn't seem to notice us. After he passes, we almost instantly forget about it and resume talking, laughing, and just being a bit loud. Perhaps 10 minutes later, we hear that same crunch of gravel, so we go silent and look towards the school. Once again, it's the bike guy, but this time, once he reaches the basketball court, he doesn't keep walking. Instead, he stops at the edge of the field we're sitting on and just stares out at it for maybe a minute or so, kind of like he was looking for us. We're a little creeped out at this point, so we start packing our things to leave. Then, this dude begins walking towards us. Once he steps out onto the field, it became much more difficult to see him, as the light from the school only lit up so much. We take this as our cue to leave, and the only way to leave without being extremely visible is to take the path into the townhouses. So that's what we do. We try our best to be quiet, and we walk through the pitch-black path that leads to the townhouse complex. Keep in mind that we are not sober, so we're extra freaked out. I checked behind us constantly, and for some reason could not shake the feeling that something bad was going to happen. We finally reach the end of the pitch-black path and make it into the decently lit townhouse complex. We ease up a little bit and begin trying to find our way to the main entrance, because that's the closest way out besides the way that we came in. We're walking through the complex and start talking once more, Finally, we turn the corner to leave, and just as we're about to leave, we see the same guy with his bike right at the entrance. We all stop for maybe 2 seconds, and then this guy drops his bike and darts right at us insanely fast. I mutter a quick, "Oh shit," and my boyfriend and I begin sprinting as fast as we can away from this guy. We turn random corners and go down little back alleys, not once checking behind ourselves. I don't know when or where we lost him, but when we became tired and took a stop behind some bushes, we both noticed that there was no man in sight. We stay in the same position for about 20 minutes trying to calm down. At this point, we've both pretty much sobered up, so we decide to try and leave again. We begin walking through the complex once more, and when we make our way back to the main entrance, we both see that bike guy's bike is gone. We are both unsettled by this, because now we know he's no longer in the townhouse complex. We have no clue where this guy is, or if he's just going to randomly appear again. Lucky for us, we both made it home safe that night, but I'll never forget the feeling of my heart sinking when we saw a bike guy blocking our way out. By far, one of the creepiest things I've ever experienced. This was at Deschutes Park in Washington State. It's a smallish trail that has a couple waterfall viewpoints. We went out because it was mushroom season, and we were looking for chicken of the woods and oysters. So the three of us got to the park. There's no one else in the parking lot. Cool, we get to have the trail to ourselves and talk. We go down, mess about for an hour looking for mushrooms and just enjoying the fresh air and quietness. We stop and see this giant oyster mushroom. This thing was like 2 pounds intact. I got really excited and said, "Whoa guys, look," more loudly than normal. At this point, we all looked and I noticed some sticks cracking off in the woods. Then I hear a tree knock, and being in Bigfoot country, that definitely snapped our attention behind us. NBD for squirrels and deer are around, but this sounded like a hard stick on a tree. When we turned around, I see an older man, about 5'7", glasses and gray hair, a red North Face windbreaker and blue jeans, jump from behind a tree. He was holding a walking stick, so I assumed that's what it was. It seemed like he was peering around the tree, spying on us dramatically, and jumped out trying to appear normal. Then he ran towards us. This dude was not on the trail and got there after us. I kept hearing snaps in the woods throughout our walk, but it didn't click until I saw him. At first, he seemed not to notice us, but was startled looking and ran towards us anyways. We tensed as he approached. We didn't have a weapon, but my boyfriend is pretty big. Me and my cousin are female. We were the ones talking loudly, so I'm sure he heard us and thought we were alone. He started walking with us, and I noticed he had a slight English accent. A formal-sounding guy, but creepy. He was saying things like, "Do you have any weapons? There's been bears down here." There was no bears we knew of in that area. He also asked us at the end of the trail if we wanted to partake in his ritual in the water. At the end of the trail, the water kind of is accessible, but it's freezing cold rapids. This day was about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. No way this thinner older man is going to jump in there, I thought. But he was insistent on us going down there with him. I was like, no thank you. I didn't know what else to say. I felt like this dude was either 100% some weirdo creep looking to kill us, or some partially psychotic man on a hike. One day, about a year ago, I was leaving work and going to my car. I parked behind our building that day, and I was the only person parked in back. It's not the nicest of areas, so I'm always very aware of my surroundings when I'm walking in the back, and the parking lot is a big open circle, so you can obviously see if there's anyone walking around. I was in the middle of the parking lot, so lots of open room around me. I got into my car, locked it, and started setting up my phone for music. I had a feeling to look up, and in my rearview mirror, a guy pops up from behind my car with his hands on the trunk. He started waving his arms in a come here motion, then started walking around my driver's side. I immediately floored it out of there, but he was running trying to catch up. I lost him, but when I got home, I realized the only place he could have come from was underneath my car. I would have seen him in the parking lot, and there's no way he could have ran through the open lot and been able to pop up behind my car in the couple of minutes I was setting up my phone without me seeing him. I now check under my car every time.